Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Duke of Italy, favorite lo-fi music YouTuber, and welcome to a long overdue concert review. And before I say anything, this probably won't be nobody, but just in case if someone asks, yes, I lost nothing but black metal in November because I listened to 100 Gecs. Because judging by the title of this video, you could probably tell, on November 2nd, I went and saw 100 Gecs in Atlanta at the Dairy. Now, this was a great concert. I'm just going to say before anything else, but I do have a couple disclaimers, and I have a whole lot to say about the show. So first of all, I went with our good friend Bridget, who you've all probably seen on this channel once or twice. Bridget shows up for some bits every now and again. And you guys know I'm already a huge fan of 100 Gecs. I've probably mentioned that once or twice on this channel. I'm not sure, but if I haven't, here it is now. I'm a big fan of 100 Gecs, and it's a totally uncharacteristic taste for what I like. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Dorian Electra, Charlie. I've only really heard one Charlie album, and I liked it a lot, but I'm like, it's not 1000 Gecs. Really, pop music in general hasn't really hit 1000 Gecs territory for me all that often. I just think it's a very fresh album. It still sounds good even today, over a year later. I found the album actually not that long after it released, probably like a good month or so. It was big on Mew at the time, and my best friend who met Dylan Brady, he was like, hey Duke, I have this album to show you. And he played 745 Sticky and then went into Money Machine, and I was like, I don't know if I like this, but it's insane. And then one day, like 4 months later, it was still 2019, so you can tell like the wave didn't really hit yet. I was like, wow, kind of love it now. Like, it just clicked one day. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But I slowly grew to love the style of 100 Gecs. Dylan Brady's production is awesome. I think everything he does, even vocally, is really awesome too. And I don't know Laura's solo material, but what she adds to 100 Gecs is pretty apparent, and it's always effective. I love what Laura adds. It's really a great combination that both of them do together. So I wanted to see them live. Bridget one day was like, hey Duke, they're selling 100 Gecs tickets, let's go. And I was like, let's definitely go. So I make the trip down from Savannah to Atlanta, which is like a 4-hour trip. I skipped some classes to go there. Sorry, any of my professors, if you watch this, they're not gonna. But I went down to see 100 Gecs. And we get to super early, and it's Atlanta, so you do some Atlanta stuff while you're there. When I saw King Crimson, Bridget wanted to go to the K-pop store because Bridget's into K-pop. But here we just kind of hung around, and then we went to the show. We were in line for probably about a half hour before the doors even opened, I want to say. We were talking with some people there. At the 100 Gecs show were some characters. Everyone there almost made it their goal to dress as interestingly as possible. I had my Death Grips shirt. That was the Bionicles characters, which I've got another story about that, but that's for another time. But I was like, this is a perfect shirt for tonight. One dude had the Cat Playboy Cardi shirt, which was awesome. One person had a Mayhem t-shirt with I think it wasn't Day Mysteries, but it was a picture of Dead and Euronymous together, which was hilarious. A lot of fun shirts, a lot of really cool references. I could kind of tell that we were going to be kind of around some goobers because, like, it's 100 Gecs fans. Like, this is the TikTok crowd, the people who, like, never met, which is a good song. Some people who probably like Sugar Crash. I'll say straight up, I don't like Sugar Crash at all. It feels like a psyop. That song feels like a psyop. It feels like it's something the government is doing to, like, poison our youth. It's to, like, worm into, like, the politically divergent. That's a word that's probably real, but I just invented its terminology right now for this context. TikTok people who like Charlie and 100 Gecs because that's all they like in hyperpop, and they don't get much deeper. They never heard of AG Cook, and it's sort of like they wanted us to, like, worm in their brain to, like, I don't know, make them do something crazy, which is irrelevant, but that's kind of the crowd we were dealing with this night, as we could tell from this point. So we enter the building, and the Dairy is a really cool venue. If you ever go to Atlanta to see a show at the Dairy, you will have a good time, most likely. It's very nice there. There's a bar at the back. I didn't go because I'm only 20. crowd was huge, and there was a higher level where a lot of people were watching down, and there was a pit. Super cool venue. Stage wasn't huge, but it looked nice, and the lighting was really good too. So who opened the show was this guy called Tony Velour, who at the time I hadn't heard of. But if you like 1000 Gecs and the Tree of Clues, you know him from the Gecec remix, where there's the two dudes who rap over it. Who their bars are pretty good, and I think that remix is a very solid remix. Especially it's unexpected because it's basically taking the more like plunderphonics, like bizarro aspect of the song and turning it into a hip hop beat, which I thought was a really strong idea. And so this guy showed up because he's good friends with Dylan Brady, and he opened the show with his little set. People were getting hyped to it. The pit was very much not there to see Tony Velour because honestly, I didn't think he was on the card, but I wasn't sure. And we all enjoyed his set. He did a very good job. A lot of his stuff was super bassy. His beats were awesome. He sang some pretty high notes a couple times, we thought he was just a rapper. And normally rappers have like decent singing voices or like decent enough singing voices, but his voice was actually pretty solid. I really liked watching him. I thought he was a great opener. And then after a 15-minute break, we saw Alice Gas show up, who is like a hardcore like trance like EDM artist with like bits of like nightcore and stuff that sounds like the Hamtaro soundtrack thrown in. I kept saying that to Bridget the whole night. I'm like, yo, this is a Hamtaro type beat. She was fun. She did mostly EDM dance type stuff for about like 2/3 of her set, which was constant. It was like one mixed in unending set, which I've never seen like an EDM artist live, so I wouldn't really know how that works, but I'm assuming they typically do that, which very good set. And then about like 2/3 through, you could tell some people were kind of getting worn down by this like really bright like poppy sound with like almost like anime voices in the back. So then she turned it into like the thickest bass sounds you've ever heard in your life. Utterly like earth-shaking amounts of bass. It was insane amounts of bass. You felt it like in your back. It went through your chest into your back, which was super cool. Honestly, I'd never experienced that in a live show before, and being in the pit, it was really different too. And Alice Gas was funny. She hit her jewel like 4 times right when the set started, and then kind of chilled for like the rest of the set, but was like hitting it like a person typically does in our generation would. So that was Alice Gas's set, and then the hype got real for a good minute or two because we all could tell 100 Gecs was going to be out, and I already knew they were going to have a 40-minute long set. It was going to be tight. I heard about Gecec being on acoustic guitar. I've heard little inklings of singles being pushed out, and just about a week and a half before, I think they announced 10,000 Gecs was soon. The hype was through the roof. The dude took a picture with his DS. So I saw like 3 people with their DSs there. Nintendo DS, by the way, if that doesn't sound familiar to you. Some of you might be too young for that, which is, I mean, not entirely surprising, which that's just an observation. Irrelevant. But what actually matters is that the hype was so real that you have all sorts of people in here now. Now you've got a lot more of a normal crowd, and I'm sure 100 Gecs fans won't take offense to that because, I mean, we all know we're not exactly normal people. I didn't say you're cringe, I said you're not normal, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But a lot more of a mainstream crowd was entering. So you had people surging to the front. Now, little caveat, after a very recent show with one Travis Scott that is currently super trending right now, this definitely put this show in retrospect in a different light for me, especially once 100 Gecs came out. Not that there were too many issues, but it does make me think of it a little differently. It was not that tightly packed, but I mean, there were points where it were, but it was more rare. It was like because they surged into you. The edges were totally fine. People in the back were totally fine. I'm not gonna act like I'm taking any attention away from the Astroworld situation because that would be terrible of me. And I don't like to be controversial on this channel at all. But I found it rather timely that this happened because I've actually never been in a show with a pit situation before until this. Like I've been to shows that were like kind of open, but those are more like independent kind of punky shows. This was a pit type show, and When 100 Gecs came out, everyone wanted to be up front to film them playing 800 Decibel Cloud and Money Machine and Stupid Horse and probably Gecc Acoustic. It did put a damper on the rest of the show because you had a lot of people trying to get to the front. And I mentioned previously that I waited a half hour in line for this. I drove the 4 hours down, paid the general admission fee that everyone else paid, but I waited in line. You think I wanted to wait around in line with all those goobers? No, I would have gotten in and saw everyone's shirt within 5 minutes. Instead, I was there waiting in line because that's what gives you the privilege of being near the front. And I still wasn't near the front. I was third row. And you know what? There were these two girls, I remember, who were probably like 4'10" each. Same time, both 4'10". And they walk up, and I could tell they wanted to ask me if I wanted to get front. And in terms of a 100 Gecs show, I look like a tough guy. No offense to 100 Gecs fans, but you don't look tough. Bar like two guys there. Two guys there were like insanely jacked. But I was one of the toughest looking dudes there. Not a high bar. Again, I am 5'7". You're not going to make fun of me for it because I've come to terms. But these two girls, they look like they wanted to ask me a question. I could tell they wanted to get more forward because they couldn't see anything. So I was like, yeah. I just went to them. I was like, hey, do you guys want to come forward a little bit? And they were like, yes, please. And so I moved them forward. Anyways, 100 Gecs is about to come out. The lights all dim. Everyone comes out. It is insane. People start surging towards the front. The hype is utterly ridiculous. You see Laura and Dylan in the wizard costumes. Super sick. I mean, who doesn't love wizards? And they come out in this yellow and purple costume. It's hilarious. And then they're just about to just rage. They open with a new song, unannounced. It sounds like Beastie Boys. From what I could tell down there, the bass was like utterly earth crushing. It was a loud show, and people were just going nuts. And it sounded awesome too. And then it just settles down for a second, and then you hear like the whooshing sounds, and they go into Stupid Horse, which people were flipping out with that. People were recording. People were moshing like crazy, which this is where the crowd kind of deviates for me, where you got the dudes who are here. They're like, oh, I love 100 Gecs. And they came like alone, and they're kind of alone here, and they really want a good experience. And then there's the people who are like, I'm here to mosh to 800 Decibel Cloud. And some people were like that. Some people definitely weren't. Some people were not good in the crowd. I'll get to that probably at the end of this video. But I'll keep summarizing the set here. So they did Stupid Horse, which went insane. And then they brought out like 2 xylophones. And they played their own rendition of New York, New York. This was unheard of before, to me at least. I haven't been paying too much attention to their Instagram stories. But basically every time on the beat, people in the crowd just said ATL ho over and over. I'm not from Atlanta, so I'm not too familiar with that. But it was a lot of energy in the room, and that was probably like the most like wholesome part of the show in a way. It was kind of hilarious. And then I don't remember the exact set list in order after that, but they played hits like Ringtone. They played Money Machine towards the end. They played Gecc Acoustic, which I wasn't sure if Laura was going to hit those notes. She hit them super well. Super proud of you, Laura. That was really impressive, honestly. It just sounded really awesome. The energy in there was great. 100 Gecs were going off without a hitch at all. And then I want to say after Gecc, Laura brings out what I think is a Telecaster guitar. It's one of those like electric guitars that you're like, oh, they're gonna play like a Strokes cover or something like that. And then they start playing this song, which is one of the most like hellish things I've heard live. And Laura's making the most just disgusting, like destructive sounds on this like Telecaster. And it just sounds like hellfire. And I'm like shocked at this, but it amps me up so much because people are like falling over me. So I just start like shoving people. Everyone's just moshing at this point, which you don't really mosh to industrial metal, which is kind of what they were doing here. Not like Rammstein, but like more like industrial music with a metal tinge to it. Everyone was just going crazy. That was probably the highlight of the night for me, except for a little bit later. That was insane. And then they played like another song that was off the new album that also sounded like Beastie Boys. They were like rapping up there, which was like super sick, super fun for like this whole point. And then they like sort of ended their set with the song that was about like stinking or whatever, which I forgot. I swear I thought I heard it in a dream or something, but it sounded just great. And that's when that was like the fake out ending. And then they came out once again, of course, because they missed a couple songs here. They already played Money Machine. But I was thinking to myself, I'm like, are they going to play 745 Sticky? Are they going to finally play I Would Never Stop You Live? Which I know that's probably a pretty intensive song for electronics, and it's probably pretty hard to do live. But I just hope someday they'll be able to do it. They didn't do 745 Sticky. They played another new song, and then they ended the show with 800 Decibel Cloud, which for that song and several others, I barely even paid attention to them on stage, but the energy they gave to the room was unmatched by any other place I've ever been. You could tell everyone felt that 100 Gecs was there, but I did not consciously acknowledge their presence at that point. At that point, it was just their music, and it was just this massive force. And 100 Gecs was once in an interview mentioned, I think Laura said this, and she was like, everyone thinks our music is like a joke, or like ironic. It's not ironic, it's serious. And judging by the textures and stuff, like I know that the EP had a whole bunch of like dog barking sounds, and I know that like they used a whole bunch of like trance and like EDM type influences, which sound kind of silly, but live you felt just such this genuine emotion to it, and it's so hard to explain. But like it clicked for me more than I ever had before, which is weird because I already was in love with 1000 Gecs, and it's like it brought it to a new level. And it's rare for a live show to really make me think, wow, I did not appreciate this music like I could. In that album, I was like, please release on CD, please release, please do a vinyl repress, please make more merch because I want it. I desperately want it because I love this so much. And they just brought it out to me, and they're like, you don't even know how much you want it because it's this phenomenal. So in a nutshell, the show, they like half of their stuff was like new material, and it all sounded amazing. Genuinely, I think when 1000 Gecs comes out, it has the potential to be one of the best albums of the year. I thought 1000 Gecs, sorry, I meant 10,000 Gecs. 1000 Gecs was one of the best albums of 2019, probably like top 10. And I think 2019 is one of the most stacked years of music that I've actually like dived into, which was funny because that's actually when I started getting into your Radiohead and all these different things. And I was just like, wow, everything this year is like awesome. And then 10,000 Gecs' stuff like wowed me so far. I think it has genuinely the potential to be one of the best albums of the year, judging by their live material alone. And I'm not even sure if this is true, but some of the songs were like probably like 3.5 minutes, even longer. And 100 Gecs is known for like 2-minute songs. They are dynamic. They shift and shift and shift and shift. The emotional impact is delivered. It peaks and it is done. And it doesn't linger at all. Some of these songs were like 3 minutes and they felt fresh the whole time, which for how fast-paced 100 Gecs moves, very, very impressive. And it sounds like really simple ground to break. It's like, oh, I got to 3 minutes and still kept your attention. But they totally did it. And with their like dynamic and like honestly like uninviting style, it would probably be a challenge. So I commend them greatly for moving to these heights. I hope no one takes this idea and like clowns them and like, wow, you finally reached 3 minutes, because Gecs used 3 minutes. But they sounded awesome. Now, a little thing about the crowd, because I know I complain about the crowd at the King Crimson show. They were fine at the King Crimson show. I bagged on them a little too much because, you know, even though they were boomers, they totally enjoyed the show and they were very respectful, which I'll give it to them. Thank you, boomers. Thanks, I guess. But at the 1000 Gecs show, there were some people that I wasn't huge on. Some of the people there were not like here for a social gathering. They were probably there to watch 100 Gecs perform. I totally understand that. And they were just getting smashed in the mosh pits. And just because the surging waves of the audience was definitely not what they wanted. And a lot of them, I felt like they probably didn't want to be there at that point, which I felt pretty bad. But I was like, you got to be a little wild. But I was not myself doing that much. I was just jumping around, being myself there. It felt liberating in an interesting way. And unfortunately, there were all these people trying to push towards the front, which was hurting the show for everyone else. And there were two events. Bridget, this one happened to Bridget, where this person was like trying to cut real close to the front and turned around to her friends and was like, I got to the front. And Bridget was super pissed off at that because, again, I was like, you didn't wait. Like, you didn't earn this. Not that it's like my God-given right. Not that it's a privilege that's going to affect me in a year. But it's still like, have some common courtesy. And there's this other dude. I nearly got a little violent at the show. I'll be honest. Not like violence has like a harsh connotation these days. I mean, I nearly like fought this dude. He like it felt like dudes were being pushed against you constantly this show, which was like fine. I was like, that sucks, but I'm not gonna cry about it. And this dude, I thought, I'm like, wow, they're really pushing for like a minute or two straight, until I realized he was leaning on me. No one was pushing him. He was like on top of me. And I'm short, but I'm more built than this dude will ever be. So I just take him and I push him behind me. And I think at that point he realized, he's like, oh, this is not a typical 100 Gecs fan. This is not one of the goobers around here who's like 110, drinks Monster with Sour Patch every day. I do like my Monster, but I like all the different flavors. And he didn't know who I was, and that level of disrespect was irritating, because I was like, I'm not gonna vouch for 100 Gecs fans. I love 100 Gecs, but some of their fans can be somewhat cringe, I'll admit. But you don't have the right to lean on somebody just because they're shorter than you, or just because you think, oh, you're a 100 Gecs fan and you won't do anything about it. I'll do something about it. And that's all there is to it. Like, you're stupid if you think I'm just gonna let you do that for the whole show. I'm not that dude over there who's weighs 120 and has been crashed into the whole night and he's gonna go home sad about it. Like, I'm gonna be getting some other emotions out of the show. That was one of my highlights of my night, was pushing him behind me. Not that I want him to do that. I hope he went home and kind of considered what he did. Not that I'm gonna be in his thoughts in a year. I'd like to be, but that's for another time. But 100 Gecs set list was untouchable. Honestly, untouchable. Fantastic set list. Like, go see 100 Gecs. Like, do it. It was great. Especially if you want to hear some new stuff, which is so smart on them. And I think they might not even release any of it on Spotify, and they just dump the album on us. And they're like, use 10,000 Gecs, have fun, which will be pretty ballsy of them, which I'll totally appreciate. We go see 100 Gecs. Be tall. If you're tall, you have zero issue. You could be in the middle or the back and see over everybody, because I mean, 100 Gecs' audience is probably like 70% like female, I'm assuming. So you'll be taller than them if you're like sufficiently tall. I was totally fine. I could still see totally fine. So even if you're like average height female or like short male, you're fine probably. Great show. Go see them. Go support 100 Gecs. Super honest artists, and I mean that. But that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I talked for a while, but I was pretty passionate about this whole thing, and it really stuck in my head for like a long time. Again, saw them on November 2nd at the Dairy in Atlanta. Had a really great time. Hope you guys go see them. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Any comments, questions, or concerns, go ahead and comment down below. I would really love to hear them and engage with you guys about 100 Gecs, because I know they're pretty popular right now. And they're one of the rare like artists that come out, and I'm like, this really sticks with me. But that's about it. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Have a good one. Bye.